Patch 16.6 changed so many different unlock conditions, which means that basically every opener we learned last patch is different now. And also, Fast 9 and AP are much stronger now, so we're going to cover all the different types of openers you can use on this new patch, what to win streak with, what to lose streak with, and also just what to look for whenever you start your game. So first, let's cover the broken openers. These are just comps that you can play if you get these starting units. So first, we're going to cover the verticals and hard forcing. If you ever get an early Yasuo, you could pretty much just go straight into Yone or Ahri reroll. Sion gives you a great start into Mel Fast 9 because it gives you access to LeBlanc and also the Noxus path, and then upgraded Yordles is a great way to get into Anti-Silas, Bilgewater. You could go into Bilgewater, and then next up, we have some emblems. If you ever get an emblem augment and random Zon, for example, like Jinx Flex is something that you just auto-force, and same with Freljord Seraphine. Next, if you ever get an artifact to start the game with, you could consider going into Slayers or even Tryndamere Ashe reroll. Not too many people are playing this comp right now because he's not actually that good unless you get an artifact. That's the main barrier to this comp, so if you get something like Mittens, Rapid Fire Cannon, Death's Defiance, things like that, then your Tryndamere Ashe reroll is actually going to do really well. Next, we have some reroll checks. If you ever get too much value, just hard force Aphelios reroll, very strong comp there. Leona or Zoe. If you get an early Leona or Zoe, you could go into Targ and Malzahar. And then lastly, if you get an early Ahri, you could just hard force Ahri reroll. So all these comps are available on the tier list on bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where you can pretty much find every single one of these comps and how to play them. So before we get into the meat of the video, I want to cover one more option that we have, which is lose streaking. So lose streaking right now is actually not as bad as it was before because a lot of reroll comps got activated because of the Bard changes. Bard's much easier to unlock now. So if you ever know you're going to guarantee a lose streak, you could do like a semi-open fort for a reroll comp, play some Bard, and then roll aggressively on stage 3-5. And there actually are a bunch available now. The Jinx comp's pretty good. You could do Ahri, a couple of other different options available there. Let's get on into the tier list, the stage 1 tier list. What unit should you be holding in stage 1? So one unit that changed a lot, Lulu used to be F tier, now she is S tier. The reason why is because AP is back in the meta now, and Yordles are a great way to generate econ to get into level 9. And it also opens up a lot of different comps. You could play stuff like, of course, the Mel stuff. You could play Rise from this, and you could also even do something like a Veigar through Yordles. But also, since you're playing a lot of AP items, like Lulu's a decent holder for that, and her traits are just good overall. Like Yordle plus Arcanist, it's kind of just a dream start for AP. Next, we have in the A tier, we have Shen as an Ionia. Ionia, again, is very good because you get access to Yone so much easier, and also Ahri reroll is viable. So they have like 2 comps that you could choose from, depending on what items you get. Bilgewater's still good. Slayer's still good in the early game. Like the 2 Slayers, Briar and Kiana, like even if the meta is horrible for these 2 champions, they'll still do well in the early game, so you can never really discount these 2 units. Next up we have is Jarvan. He helps you open up the Rise Demacia comp that's pretty popular right now, and that is one of the other S tier Fast 9 AP comps that I have out right now. In the B tier, these are just some units that are like, okay, they complement the A and S tier pretty decently, that's why they're in the B tier, but they're by no means like the super good ones. And then C tier and D tier, you probably don't want to hold on to them unless you have nothing else to do. So if you get them 2-star for free, you can play them, but they're just better things to go for on this patch. For 2 cost, Sion is obviously extremely good because he unlocks LeBlanc, as we talked about before. Yasuo, probably one of the best units you could get early game. You just hard force Ionia from there. He holds all the items for Yone, so it's just a no-brainer to just play him and hard force if you get him from a drop. Orianna's good from an unlock, but obviously you need to unlock that. And then Nico, she just opens up a lot of options for you. She is an Arcanist, Defender, and Ixtal, so pretty much any Arcanist right now is going to have higher value. But you also open up Ixtal, and then Defender's just good as like a defensive trait early game. Next up we have is the A tier. We got the Bilgewater units. Vi's pretty good to pair with Nico, and then Teemo's just good with Yordles. And then B tier, Aphelios got dropped down a bit. It's not that he's bad, it's just that AD comps are just much worse than AP comps. Obviously, he's still going to be a good option if you have AD items in the early game, but he's just not as OP as he was last patch. After that, we got some unlock units, and then we have Xin Zhao and Ashe. Obviously, Ashe is only good if you can get to Tryndamere, but Tryndamere is only good if you are able to get an artifact item. Like, I probably wouldn't force Tryndamere unless I had that, so you're probably going to be keeping Ashe a little bit more on the back burner unless you get some insane items. Next up, we have the Void units and also Echo. It's not that Void is that bad, it's just that there are better options out there. Void is very situational, as we talked about in the tier list video. because they are both a level 8 and level 10 comp, but right now we're focused on level 9, so they're kind of in that awkward spot, but they still have some times where they work out, such as when you have like super econ or everyone's broke. Next up, let's talk about the 3 costs. So Ari, LeBlanc, and Zoe, these 3 are all like the 3 cost AP units. For Ari and Zoe, you could just force a reroll comp with them. LeBlanc, just very solid if you get her unlocked with Scion. And then go into Mel later, which is the best comp. That's why they are in the S tier. And then in the A tier, we have Leona, Draven, Jinx, Malzahar, and Sejuani. These units either unlock a lot of the A tier comps or they are complementary to every other game plan. So for example, Leona, great with the Zoe comps. Also, she's just a very solid tank in the early game. Draven's good because Noxus is good. And he also works in the AD comps, which is really, really nice. And he gives you a little bit of gold early game. Jinx is Jinx, like the Zon comp's pretty good. And yeah, like B tier Bilgewater units solid, but they're not as mandatory as the other ones because you need the other ones, the 1 and 2 cost Bilgewaters upgraded. Whereas getting the other Bilgewater units not as important because you could always get them from the Bilgewater shops. But yeah, that's pretty much all you really have to worry about. Like the B tier, they're mainly complementary units. If you're not going those comps, just ignore these units like Milio and Loris. And then the C and D tier are just very low priority. Like you probably don't want to be losing an interest by holding them on your bench unless you absolutely know you're going for that comp. Like if you have Demacia secured already, then yeah, you can keep Vayne. If you have Zon secured already, then yeah, Mundo makes a lot of sense. But unless that specific scenario happens, you pretty much just ignore them. Let's move on into augments. For just the auto take augments on stage 2-1 to just hard force a comp, too much value is still really good with a Phelios reroll. Going into that is pretty much a no-brainer. Prismatic Ticket going into Ari reroll makes a lot of sense. This one's going to be the strongest reroll, but honestly, you could do any reroll comp of your choosing. Patience is a virtue. This one gives you Bard pretty much for free. And if you do this, do the lose streak, play Bard, and then do any reroll comp in stage 3. Hefty reroll is kind of the same thing. This is the one where your team gains health and size each time you roll during the game, and you also get a bit of gold. And because a lot of reroll comps are actually viable right now, this is one of the best augments in the game right now. Any of the random trait augments, these are still good to take. If you don't have direction in your game, like for example, you just have a bunch of random upgraded units, you take one of these and then you decide what to go after that or let the game decide for you. Bringer of Ruin, Noxus, just hard force that, go into Mel later. Ixtal Expeditionist, play the tempo Ixtal, nothing too crazy there, nothing changed. And then Unleash from Steel, Darkened Staff is the best item to take right now, because it pretty much enables all of the AP lines. So if you don't know which one to take the staff, but obviously the other ones are still viable. Like Aegis is really good if you have a strong tank item holder in the early game and you can use it to win streak. And then Scythe and Bow, they're still okay, but because attack damage is a bit worse right now, you don't really want to go for them. But for Darkened Staff, you could go to teamfight.lol. There's a bunch of data on all of these items, and you can see a bunch of random units that use these pretty decently and what to pair it with. So you could pair Darkened Staff with like Jeweled Gauntlet, Spear of Shojin, Nashers, Void Staff, Blue Buff, all the good stuff. And then, of course, all the good AP units, they can all use this item. So it's really, really nice stuff there. Obviously, like the best holder for this is going to be something like a Silas, because there just aren't too many AP melee units that can use the Darken buff. Most AP units are going to be range, but there are some of them out there. Next one up we have is Portable Forge and Living Forge. Like we already talked about Tryndamere, it's really, really good. But what I like to do whenever I play this or take this is just do a simple data check. You just go to artifact items over here and then sort by average placement, and then see which ones you get. If it's performing better than like a 4.0 with like a certain champion pairing, it's probably going to be good enough to hard force. Usually it's going to be on a reroll comp. So for example, if I click Static Shiv, there aren't too many 1, 2, or 3 costs here. So you probably don't take this unless you just know you're going generic APs, maybe like a Kaisa. But if we scroll down a bit and click something like, let's say Flicker Blades, for example, you'll see that, oh, there might be a reroll unit with this Jinx at like a 3.93, and you probably know it's going to do pretty decently. I'm not saying you can't use artifact items on 4 and 5 cost units. It's just that the data's a little skewed on those units right now because Ornn exists. So what ends up happening is that you play a fast 9 comp, you play Ornn if you're winning and can afford to lose HP, and then you just get an artifact item and then you just put it on whoever. So it kind of inflates a lot of the artifact item placements. So I wouldn't say you should trust every artifact item data that you see, because it is important to know that artifacts are mainly used with reroll comps, not so much like Fast 8 or Fast 9. The reason why is part of my TFT Fundamentals video series, and that video covers that reroll comps, you really only care about 1 or 2 units, and when that happens, you want to concentrate all your power into them. in like Fast 8, Fast 9 comps, you're running a lot of good units. You're running a lot of good units, so you don't need to concentrate the power as much. You'd rather get like a combat augment, which buffs your whole team, or something like an item augment so you could have multiple carries. So that's kind of the difference between getting an artifact item versus a regular item, and also why artifacts are typically better with reroll comps. Next up we have is 9 lives. This is a very good augment right now because you could spike with any of the reroll comps we talked about. And then we have Worth the Wait, another good augment to take, but this one isn't reroll. This one is just like it gives you a 3-star 2 cost. And there are actually quite a few good options right now, and there is a short tier list here, but obviously you can't choose what you get. Next we have Seraphim Staff. You could play any of the AP lines, so that's really good right now too. Infinity Protection. You could play either Yone or Jinx Flex. Infinity Force is pretty much good on any melee carry, just because they can almost use every single stat. Some of the flex augments out there, though, is going to be Expected Unexpectedness, Delayed Start, 2-Trick, and Birthday Reunion. So you can use all of these similar to the trait ones, where if you don't really know what you're doing, you can go for one of these and then do decently well. So obviously, every augment has its place. I didn't cover every single augment. There are like 500 augments. I don't know how many there are nowadays. Every set, I swear they raise the number, but if you ever see any of these, just auto take them and you will not regret it. Obviously, you still need to play the actual game though. But next up we have are some items for the early game. This hasn't really changed too much, but I'm going to leave this up here as a reference. This will be available on the website bunnymuffins.lol/openers, but it pretty much covers all the quote unquote good items that you need to make for most of the comps out there. Obviously, every item has its use. I'm not saying never build stuff in the D tier or C tier. It's just going to be a little bit of a more specific scenario. But right now, since we're in AP meta, you want AP items, and then like obviously Bramble Vest is going to be a little less value. But if you get 2 chains, you have to use them at some point, so you might have some games where you are forced to build it. But next, let's go into win streaking and lose streaking. So comps to play from a win streak are definitely all the Fast 9 comps. You don't want to like do super lose streak Giga Econ with Fast 9. Like obviously you want Giga Econ, but you need it in combination with having good health. Because if you go for Fast 9 and you lose streak the entire game, you might not even make it to level 9, or you have to do everything in one roll down and pray that you hit everything. If not, you just lose out on the next turn, right? So that's why one of the common mistakes a lot of players need to fix is when going for Fast 9, make sure you actually are getting a pretty good early game in, because if not, it's going to be a little bit rough. But the good news is that in this patch, if you can't Fast 9 because you can't win streak early, there are a bunch of reroll options that you can pivot to, and even some Fast 8 options. Next up, we have our unit tiers for this. The only change is going to be the Slayers being bumped up to S tier for win streaking, so that's the one thing you have to keep in mind there. And also, it's worth to note that Bruisers are the highest statted defensive trait right now for the early game, meaning you can play a lot of different things around that. For 2-cost units, Aphelios very solid in the early game for win streaking still. Nico and Scion we kind of already touched on before, and then obviously like Bilgewater pretty good, and some of these units in the A tier are just solid at securing wins. Like Yasuo is down a bit. We did say Yasuo was S tier in terms of general units to hold on to, but that's because he's good in your overall game plan. Not so much that he's good for going 5-0 in stage 2. So that's kind of the differences between some of these tier lists. Next up we have is the 3-cost units. Noxus obviously going to be king. Ahri and Zoe just going to be king as well, because you pretty much just get a carry, but you're in stage 2 instead of stage 3, so they're just super strong there. Only other notable thing to mention is that Malzahar gets bumped down a little bit. Like he's a solid unit in his own right, and there are comps played around him, but in terms of, again, win streaking in stage 2, in terms of AP holders, Ahri, Zoe, and LeBlanc are obviously much higher than what Malzahar can bring. The other difference is that Draven also allows you to get access to Noxus really early, because he has the potential to unlock Darius, and also Darius is just a solid unit in general. But let's move on into the next section, which is going to be lose streaking. So right now, the checklist for considering a lose streak opener is either you don't have a direction, you don't have an upgrade, you get an econ augment early on, and you're also checking that not too many other people are also lose streaking. Right now, the best comps to play when you are lose streaking is going to be Ahri, Noxus reroll, Jinx Flex, Malzahar reroll, and Yone. The first few are pretty straightforward. You want to be playing reroll when you are lose streaking, but Yone also works just because you can do like a Fast 8 and play around that. So as long as you generate enough econ to get 2-star 4 costs, or at least something pretty stable, you are going to be more than fine there. Also, with the way Yone works right now, all you need to do when you lose streak is stabilize in stage 3, and because of unlocks, you can get access to the 4-cost units pretty early on, as long as you meet the unlock conditions. That's kind of why Void was really good on previous patches, because you get Ari and Rift Herald pretty early, but Yone kind of works in the same way just because you can unlock him pretty easily. In terms of unit priority, nothing too much changes that much. The specific reroll units do get bumped up a bit, and obviously for Yone, Yasuo gets bumped up a tier as well. But if you need a short write-up on all these different units that you can potentially go for, they are going to be on the full guide. But let's cover some of the generic openers, which is the AD and AP comp. So right now, AD is definitely worse than AP, but there are still comps you can go for. I write them down and also link them to the tier list just for convenience sake. But the Ionia Kiana opener still works for an AD item holder. She actually works even better now because she can hold items that can allow you to go in different directions. She could hold generic AD backline items, but she could also hold the melee items. And when you combine that with Ionia, you could eventually switch the items over onto Yone very, very easily without having to use removers on your Yasuo. Also, if you have like Yasuo 1-star, Kiana 2-star, probably going to do a bit more carrying than the 1-star. So that's another reason why 1-cost units are generally preferred as your item holders in the early game. She also works in the Noxus comp, which we've talked about so much already. Really, really good stuff there. Noxus Draven, going to work out a bit. 3-cost 1-star units are pretty comparable, especially if they are one of the premier units. So that's why Draven's really good. And of course, you can also do something like a Void Draven, or also like an Aphelios with anything up front. We talked about Aphelios before. In terms of AD item holders for 2-cost units, he is going to be one of the best just because he is a Targon unit. And when you get that status, you just have more stats than other people. So in the early game, he just gets that much better. Now for the AP openers, this one is going to be a lot more important, but we have LeBlanc in the Noxus opener right now. She could be used with a lot of other different units as the complementary ones, but just any invoker plus a bruiser for Sion works out really, really well. Sion just becomes like a super tank early, and he could start stacking potentially to allow you to snowball in the mid game. And then invoker, of course, is going to give LeBlanc a little bit more mana. Any AP items on her will work. Like, I'm obviously not saying build these exact items on these units. They're just random examples that you can kind of throw onto them because these units are just item holders for what you're going to be using later. And honestly, I can't fit all the items that I want on them because there are so many more AP items than what's listed over here. Next up, we have our long shot defenders. This opener is still pretty decent just because you have some cheap units in the backline that you could replace with anything until you get something a bit better. This one's good for going into comps like Kaisa or Demacia if you are going level 8. But of course, for level 9, any of the AP comps, Mel, Annie, Silas, Rise, can all work really, really well there. Demacia Orianna works out pretty decently too. This one's good for the Rise comp. Pretty much you just try to unlock Orianna early on, and then you just run her with the generic Demacia opener. The reason why it works is because Sona is also an Invoker and Demacia unit, and then Orianna is just a solid item holder to have. But all the same AP comps applies there. Rise Fast 9 probably going to be the most obvious one to go for just because he also uses Demacia and needs the Galio unlocked for that. Zoe Frontline works in the same exact way as Aphelios Frontline does. It's just a generic Targon unit in the back. And then for Arcanist and Lulu, like we obviously talked about Lulu a lot, she works in a lot of other different builds, but pretty much anything with Lulu and Rumble, you can make something work. Like Lulu Rumble plus literally any other synergy, you could pretty much do whatever you want. Like also like Lulu Nico works too. But those are going to be some examples of AD and AP boards. Obviously, there are so many more of them. Like you could probably make 50 different boards for both AD and AP as like potential openers to use. There are a lot of options, but I'm kind of just trying to show you what sort of works there and give you ideas of what units are generally better or worse to try to jumpstart your game. But honestly, openers are super duper important because they decide like your next 30 minutes of your life. Not as important as like, let's say like knowing which house to buy or whatever, but for the next 30 minutes, like this is probably the most important thing to kind of cover that. But yeah, ideally you get one of the broken openers. If not, pray for one of the broken augments. And if not, you could always default to win streaking or lose streaking and go from there. That's pretty much the Spark notes for openers for this patch. So hopefully you did enjoy this. The full guide will be available on the website at bunnymuffins.lol/openers, and the tier list is going to be pretty connected to that. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.